What do you think the 2 marks would go on when you now see the way that I've set it out? Anyone want to suggest something?
Just expand it and then you collect like terms.
Okay, so there's a few things going on, right? You can see there's some expansion happening here. Oh, sorry, yeah, I'm talking about this one. So, you know what? This one's a bit borderline. Depending on where you get it, that could either be 1 or 2 marks, because as you said, there's an expansion, then there's a collection of like terms. But, you know, because it's quite easy expanding and relatively easy collecting like terms, that's why you might just get away with 1 mark. This one, however, you've got to go for 2. Do you see why? Right? There's quite a few things happening here. This line here, let me just zoom in a little bit. This line here, a lot's going on, right? Heaps is going on. Like, you've got to be able to say, okay, I've got to put these 2 fractions together. I need a common denominator to do that. And I've also got to watch out, because I've got like an x and a +1 that both need to grow as I change the fraction, okay? Also, what I'm looking for is recognition that it's not just, for instance, I've seen some people do this. When they look and they say, oh look, there's 2 algebraic fractions there, right? And they say, I know what to do with 2 algebraic fractions. I'm going to cross multiply, right? Students will do this, okay? Now you'll get something at the end that looks like an algebraic fraction, except the reason why you can't do this is because it's not an equation, right? Like you can't just multiply, you know, I said an equation is a balanced thing, right? So you can double one side and double the other, that's fine. You can double, you can triple, whatever you like. But these are actual numbers. You can't just double or triple however you please, right? So cross-multiplying is something which I'm looking for students not to recognize not to do. Okay? So I would say there's got to be at least a mark for your answer. But prior to that, I want some demonstration of, well, where did that come from? And I find it very difficult to imagine, like I couldn't do it without doing any kind of working out. So I'm expecting the person in front of you who you're marking has also done some kind of working out. If they've gone straight to here, that's okay. But I would wonder how many people, and this is what I was looking at before, Eliza, how many people have watched out for this sign? Do you notice, right? This minus, this negative, applies to the entire fraction. So it applies to the 7x, I think most people got that, but it also applies to that guy, right? So there's fractions, and then there's expanding kind of boiled into the same question. That's what makes it more of a challenge, okay? But now that you've seen it, you will recognize it next time. So let me just rub this out of the way because it's wrong. Okay, so I'm looking for basically, so I think we'll just give that 1. I'm looking for somewhere in here for there to be 1, and then I'll give that as a final answer, a mark. Scrolling down, now again, I'd probably say this question is 2 marks. Where do you think the 2 marks are? Okay, number 1, you've got to do the substitution. You just got to put the numbers in, and you know you probably didn't need to write this. If you wrote something like that, that's okay, right? The second mark is for the approximation, right? So, excuse me, a student could get this and approximate incorrectly and then still get 1 out of 2. Obviously, however, if I did something like this and just went to my calculator and then I saw a number and then I just approximated, but if I approximated wrong, you haven't demonstrated that stuff you did before, right? So if that approximation is wrong, I don't get either of those 2 marks. Does that make sense? You see why working out's really important. Question?
So one of the marks could be pi times 11 squared.
So, just coming back, if what someone had done was written that down straight away, and it was correct, you're probably going to award the full marks there. But the working out is kind of more to catch if they didn't do it right. So if someone has just said all of that, just give them the 2, that's okay. But the problem is if someone says that, goes all the way to the end, but has made an error, and I don't know where the error is. Okay. How'd you go with the equation? Hands up if you got the equation right, hands up straight. Yeah, a decent number of you, hands down, but there was still some struggles. Yeah. So you can see, my first step was to expand. Why did I do that first? I didn't really have much choice. Why did I do that?
Brackets.
I've got to get rid of the brackets, right? Also, I mean, I suppose I could have divided by 3, but you just introduced fractions earlier on. Right? You see here my fractions appear sort of towards the end, but you can't avoid them. Whereas up here, it's like 7 over 3. Gross, I don't want to do it 7 over 3. Okay? So therefore, I expand first. What have I done on this slide? The second line I've added 3 to both sides, and then you can see I just need to divide through. This last step here, probably not like 100% necessary. If someone finished on this line, I think we're going to give them the mark for that. But you should always simplify wherever you can. It's always a good idea.
2 marks?
Yeah, so I think we're going to go 1 here for some kind of expansion or otherwise, like if you divided through, it still works, it's just icky. And then I think we'll close off there. If they got to 5 on 6, that's great, I did. But if they ended at 10 on 12, they've demonstrated all the important things. Okay. The royalties question. I think this one was reasonably straightforward, so you can see that. Like I've mentioned before, I always go through and I highlight the important pieces because it helps you get them in your head. And then you're just going to do this calculation. We'll just make this 1 mark, I think. I'm not going to worry about if they've approximated wrong, unfortunately. That would mean that someone just doesn't get the mark because it's 94. It's not 93. Okay?
What
So,
if it was 95?
yeah, no, they probably wouldn't get the mark because it's a very straightforward calculation. Your calculator can take care of this. And cents, dollars and cents, those kinds of things are things we need to be really familiar with. So I think that's just going to be 1 or no. Yep.
So how about if it was like 0.9?
Let's see. So yeah, I don't think I'd accept that because I mean I think did everyone calculate? Did you remember when you did this? Did you get that number? Did you see it? Yeah. I think it's kind of unusual to round off to the nearest 10 cents. 5 cents maybe, but 10 cents. Yeah. Anyway. Also, you should assume for a money question to the nearest cent is kind of the default. If they want something more specific, like to the nearest dollar or to the nearest $100 or something like that, they will specify. Okay. Right. So that was just the 1 mark. Oops, sorry. It should be there. Let's move over.